You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast. It's season 2. It's episode 35. Cubs stall versus the Cardinals. Don't forget to listen, download, review. Most importantly, subscribe to the podcast and to follow us on the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram, and Fly the W on Facebook. Of course, you can email us at flythew670@gmail.com. Crawly, how the heck are you on this Thursday afternoon?
Well, I really needed yesterday's game to get the bad taste out of my mouth. I was pretty fuming on Wednesday morning, so I'm feeling better a little bit after a big victory and a day off. I've gotten a chance to recalibrate.
Yeah, the good times were rolling over at Wrigley Field in game number 3 on Wednesday night. But let's get after it. Let's get into game number 1. We've got Willson Contreras returning to Wrigley Field, and the Cubs had Marcus Stroman on the bump.
Yeah, and I kind of warned our podcast listeners that Miles Michaelis always kind of gave the Cubs trouble. The Cubs lost this one 3-1. Couple notes that I made right here. Another wasted quality start by Marcus Stroman. He went 6 innings, gave up 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk with 6 Ks. So 7 quality starts out of 8 games, and he has only 2 wins to show and 3 losses. So he was charged with the loss for this one. So, you know, we talk about Justin Steele, and rightfully so, and making an all-star, but Stroman's right there in the conversation to be an all-star. Just the wins aren't there.
Wins aren't there, and this is a case for those that are in the wins don't matter for starting pitchers. This is where this all comes from. I still think they matter, but he has definitely been the victim of some tough no decisions and tough losses.
And the Cubs have been struggling as of lately, and the reason we know it is not scoring with runners in scoring position. We've brought that up plenty of times. It hurts the bullpen, hurts everything. The Cubs scored 1 run on 5 hits. You aren't going to win many games scoring 1 run. We've said that many a times.
Never.
Occasionally you'll get the old 1-0 win, but they're few
I don't
and far
know.
between.
If we went digging, Crawly, if we went digging right now through every game that's been played in baseball this year, I would bet there are less than 3 1-0 games so far this year in all of baseball.
Yeah, there's not a lot. It doesn't happen. You're not going to win very often. They were 1 for 7 with runners in scoring position. They left 9 men on base. To make matters worse, one of the Cubs' best hitters, leadoff man Nico Hoerner, was pulled in the 5th with what the Cubs are saying was hamstring tightness. And so here I am. We'll talk more about this in segment 3, but it was reported during the day that Christopher Morel showed up to Chicago. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, Nico's gone. Let's get Morel in here. But who does he call to replace him? Nick Madrigal, who went 0 for 2 the rest of the day. So Nico injured himself when the Cubs had their best opportunity to get some runs with runners at second and third after a Swanson double tied the game at 1-1. Ian Happ walked to load the bases. Cody Bellinger hit a ball to short right field that Brandon Donovan caught and then threw out Nick Madrigal at home by a mile. So you got to wonder, Dustin, with the way the offense has been struggling, you know, how much does that get into Willie Harris's head to send the runner?
Yeah, I mean they needed something, right? They needed an ignition. They needed something to happen, and Willie Harris, I like the guy a ton. I love his energy, but he is a little bit aggressive. But I believe David Ross is a little bit aggressive as well. So I think they walk lockstep in being aggressive on the base pass, especially when the Rispy is not going in your favor.
Yeah, well, Ross had a chance to get Morel into the game in the 9th, but he decided to use Eric Hosmer as a pinch hitter for some reason. But
that was where I really scratched my head.
Yeah, I was dropping some inappropriate language at Wrigley Field on that night. Willson Contreras' revenge game, reeling at the fact that he lost his catching duties. Contreras got a mix of cheers and boos during his intro. More cheers during the video montage the Cubs put together for him. But when he came up to the plate the first time, he got boos. He led off with the second with a single and came around to score on a Dylan Carlson single. In the top of the 4th, he grounded out to short on an amazing play. Dansby Swanson blows my mind. That ball that Contreras hit to him was hit 117 miles per hour off the bat. That was the 4th hardest ball in play this season in the majors. Then in the 6th inning, Willson crushed the ball to center field that scored Lars Nootbaar to make it 2-1. And then in the top of the 8th with 1 out, Contreras grounded into a force out. They had runners at first and third, and he grounded into a 4-star. It goes to Patrick Wisdom, who had a brain fart. Rather than starting the double play right away, he looked home, double clutched, and this allowed Willson to beat the double play and keep the inning alive and allow the run to score. So Willson was involved in all 3 of the Cardinals' runs, and the boos got louder with every at-bat, every play he made, and then he starts encouraging the Wrigley faithful to boo louder. And then after the game, Willson said, there were a couple of people booing me, and I just love that. When you get booed, that means you're doing something right. The boos were kind of an extra boost I got there. At the same time, as I was doing the hand gestures, I saw my teammates really respond to it, so I decided to keep doing it. I did not boo Willson, and here's the thing. He is a guy that loves that stuff. Why would you get him more fired up?
Yeah, it's hard. I understand. I probably, by the second time, I would have booed. I don't think I would have booed him on the first at-bat. I would not have booed him during the video tribute, but I think by the second and third at-bat, after a couple of beer bats, Crawly, I would have been booing too. And again, maybe, just maybe, Cubs score more than 1 run.
Well, here's the thing, Dustin. You remember last season when Javi Baez came to the South Side and they were booing the crap out of him. Guy couldn't hit. They start booing him and he starts going off.
Those were the best games he had. Were over 35th and Shields.
The left field bleacher bums had it right by opening up the newspapers and just looking down at the newspaper when he came up to bat. He thrives on that kind of stuff, and people fell right into it. Now, I do have to say, in all honesty, before the game, Willson talked to the media, and Megan Montemurro, he talked about, even though I'm wearing a different uniform, I'm really thankful for the fan base, talking about the Cub fans. He also said having support from them means a lot to me. If there's something in the past that got in some people's feelings, I really apologize. I would never say something against the Chicago Cubs or anything against the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, he said all the right things. He acted the right way. I thought the Cubs did a nice job with that video tribute. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought everything was great. And listen, I wish people would just understand that Willson wanted to stay.
And he wanted to stay, and they didn't want him, probably for the same reasons now that we realize that St. Louis doesn't want him squatting behind home plate anymore, at least not right this second.
Right.
So this really was like the catcher series, Crawly. This whole series that we're going to talk about is catcher related, with Willson Contreras and Yan Gomes not being there, and then maybe Yan Gomes comes back, and listen, it's going to remain a thing. Maybe not. What do you think? The next time they come to town, is this even a thing? I'm
sure it's still going to be a thing for some people, and I hope it's not, because the Cubs don't win the World Series without Willson Contreras. Gave us a lot of great memories. He wanted to be here. What was he supposed to do? And people said, well, he tried on a uniform, a Cardinals jersey when he was still with the Cubs. Yeah, after they tried desperately to trade him and tell him he's not coming back. What is he supposed to do? I mean, Jesus. So, either way, we get to game 2, and that's Jameson Taillon versus Jack Flaherty. The Cubs lose 6-4. Jameson Taillon is not back. I will tell you this, okay? Jameson Taillon is not back to where he should be. He went 2.2 innings. He gave up 5 hits, 4 runs, 2 home runs, loaded the bases in the third, and then walked in a run to end his day. So the Cubs decided he didn't need rehab starts in Iowa or anything like that. So expect Taillon to struggle for a couple more starts. I don't see that changing. He walked in a run, like I said, to end the day, and then Julian Merriweather came in and walked in another run. So you gave the Cardinals 2 free runs, and you lost by 2. One good thing that I do have to say that came out of this from the pitching standpoint.
Wait a minute. Can we go back to something really quick? Why Merriweather in that spot? I mean, we got an answer. From Tommy Hotovy, but that doesn't mean I have to be satisfied with the answer. Because they wanted Assad to come in a clean inning.
Right. Here's the thing, Dustin. I agree with
Merriweather's been hot garbage, right? And Merriweather hasn't done a thing yet.
So Merriweather reminds me a hell of a lot of Dylan Maples in a way that some of his stuff is so good, and it's exactly what you need in that situation, a guy that throws straight heat. But the trouble, just like with Dylan Maples, is that when sometimes he just completely loses it and it's a mess. And that's kind of the issue that you have. And so I get the concept. The player didn't execute. I don't blame David Ross for that one. I have different bones to pick with David Ross. That one wasn't one of them. I will
we've
say,
all got our own. We've all got our own little thing to pick at with him right now.
well, the good news, though, like you said, Javier Assad is looking more and more like the pitcher we saw in spring training.
Wow, did he look nice in that game? Yep.
And in the WBC, and less like the pitcher that struggled in April. He shut down the Cardinals and allowed the Cubs to get back into this one until David Ross made another poor managerial decision. Assad comes into the game in the fourth. He pitches 5 scoreless innings. He gives up only 1 hit and 2 walks. But by the end of the 8th, he had thrown a ton of pitches, and he's running out of gas. And Ross just rolled the dice to see what would happen in the 9th. And Assad gave up a homer, a triple, a double, and a strikeout before getting pulled. Damage is done. Cubs lose. But there's no way Assad should have come out in the 9th. I don't know what he was doing.
Yeah, I'm not sure why he was back out there. I mean, they wanted to say, well, he's been stretched out enough that's not the workload wasn't too much. They tried to pull that, but it's like he had done the job. Like I think you at that point you had gotten everything out of him that you could possibly get. I just think that was a big error.
So that got me mad. The other thing that got me mad, and this is before the game even starts. I sit there, and here comes at Cubs to show me the starting lineup. You got Magical Swanson, Hap Bellinger, Suzuki, and then Hosmer, Mervis, Morel, Amaya. We're going to talk more about Hosmer, but why the hell is he batting so high up? It makes no sense.
No idea. I don't understand it. I know we're going to get to Suzuki at some point too. I don't know why Suzuki is batting 4th or 5th every day. I don't know if that was promised or something, but he should not be batting 4th or 5th.
Well, let's look at a couple of things here. Number one, when you look at that lineup, Magical is at second base, or Magical's at third base,
Magical is
at third, right? and you got Morel at second. But Magical's natural position is second, and Morel's is at third. That's where you see the future for Morel.
Right. So, but now I will agree with you. When that happened, and I probably was looking at the same tweet you were looking at, or I retweeted it, or you retweeted at it. We saw each other's retweet. However it worked out, I had the same reaction as you had. But as the game played on, Crawly, I think that Madrigal and Morel made plays at third and second that the other guy would not have made. I don't think Madrigal turns that double play. I don't think he does. And I don't know if Morel makes that stop that Madrigal did earlier. Okay? Now, the other thing is that what it says to me is that they're not going to keep Madrigal. They're going to keep Madrigal up here. They're not keeping Morel up here very long.
We'll see what happens.
They don't. They know. Here's the thing. Nico Hoerner's coming back. He might be coming back on Friday, but I guarantee he's going to play in Minneapolis at some point. When he comes back, what's he going to play? Second base, right? So Madrigal has been playing much better, I'll raise my hand, than I ever thought he could at third base. I did not think so. They don't want to get him out of rhythm, but then they end up doing that in Game 3. We can get to that in a minute. And he had a nice play over there. But I understand after letting it sit and sink, but I had the same reaction as you. I did not like it when I first saw it, but I think that's the explanation for it.
I guess. I think in the future you're looking at Chris Morel as being your everyday third baseman. And
absolutely, but I just don't know that the future is now. I just don't know that the future is now.
Might be. I'm looking what this kid's doing here right now. Ian Happ walked 3 times. Magical was 2 for 4. Good game for him. And Chris Morel was 2 for 4 with a home run that tied the game at 4. And that's the energy that he brings. Absolutely awesome.
But he lights up Wrigley Field. I mean, he just lights it up.
More than the LEDs. And Dansby Swanson had a great game, hitting 2 doubles and another basket homer. But runners in scoring position, and this is an issue that's getting out of control. The Cubs scored 4 runs on 9 hits, going 1 for 7 with run in scoring position and leaving 9 men on base. Get this, Dustin. The Cardinals walked 7 Cubs hitters and plunked another. 8 free base runners, and none of them scored. Not a one.
It's inexcusable. It's unexcusable. We were talking about it all week on Mully and Haw. You can't have that. They should never. They should have easily taken 2 out of 3, maybe even all 3 games in this series. This was, thank goodness Wednesday. Thank goodness Game 3 happens, Crawly, because Game 2, boy, oh boy.
Well, it happened because of 3 double plays, Magical, Suzuki, and Hosmer. Twice, the Cubs had the bases loaded and couldn't score a run. First time was when the Cubs loaded the base with one out for Eric Hosmer, who proceeded to ground into a double play to end the threat and get Flaherty off the hook. And Seiya Suzuki, with the bases loaded and 2 outs, flied one to the warning track that just missed. You talked a little bit about
Crawly,
Seiya.
hold on. Was it that at bat, or was it the one before when Seiya didn't know what the strike what was going on with balls and strikes? He gets a ball 3. He takes off his arm guard and his shin guard, and he goes. It's like, wait a minute. I looked at the TV. I go, wait a minute. It's not ball 4. It's only ball 3. And then the ump's like, excuse me, we're not done yet. I mean, that's embarrassing. That's somebody that's not locked in. You cannot be a Major League Baseball player and not know what the count is when you're up to bat. And react as quickly as he did.
What I will tell you about Seiya is this, and I truly believe that he is going to be an integral part of this team. And you know how they used to say with Dexter Fowler is Hugo We Go? I think when Seiya has a good game, they're going to have a good game, and they're going to need him. Keep in mind, he didn't have a spring training. He didn't spend a lot of time in Iowa. He's about a month behind. And so I have a feeling he's going to start warming up, and I have a feeling that when you take a look at May and June, he's going to have a big month.
Hope so, Crawly. I really hope so. Now, we're going to get into Game 3 in a second. He had a much better Game 3, but I don't think he bats higher than 6 for me.
Yeah, I could see 5th, 6th, somewhere around there would be fine. I have no problem with that. Game 3, Justin Seal versus Jordan Montgomery. The Cubs win 10-4. Came out that it was really Adam Wainwright and Jordan Montgomery who had some problems with Willson, but hey, Willson wasn't buying him plate in this one, Jordan. Steele went 6 innings pitched, 7 hits, 3 earned runs, 3 walks, and 3 Ks. Earned his 6th win of the season to improve to 6-0. He's only one of 3 players with at least 6 wins this season in all of MLB. He completed 6 innings or more in 7 of his 8 starts so far and has 7 quality starts, tied for the most in the majors. Unfortunately, that streak he had of 2 or few earned runs allowed in each of his last 14 starts was snapped. That tied the Cubs franchise record with Jake Arrieta. So that's over with the 3 runs. But Cody Bellinger, and we're going to talk about him in segment 3, he did everything he could to keep that streak alive. When Lars Nootbaert singled to center and the Cardinals sent Juan Yepes home, and Bellinger threw an amazing throw that gets to Yan Gomes, who was activated before the game, and they missed him by an eyelash to throwing him out from center. Close.
In real time, I thought he got him. In real time, I thought he got him when they reviewed it, and I'm like, oh, review that. And he clearly didn't get him, but in real time, I thought he got him. Yeah,
absolutely. The offense finally returns, down 2-0 after another Willson Contreras RBI. The Cubs answered back with back-to-back doubles in the third by Swanson and Suzuki to put the Cubs on the board 2-1. Then Patrick Wisdom crushed his MLB high-tying 12th home run of the year, and the Cubs led for the first time the entire series. It took him the 3rd inning to the 3rd game to get a lead, and after that, the floodgates opened. The Cubs finished with 10 runs on 14 hits. Everyone other than Nick Magical had at least 1 hit. There were 7 extra base hits, including the one by Wisdom, and there was a home run by Wisdom and one by Yan Gomes. Swanson had 2 doubles, and Suzuki, Happ, and Morel each hit 1. How about this one, Dustin? The Cubs were 6 for 14 with runners in scoring position.
Yep, that'll work, Crawly. That will work. Did you see the stat on Swanson as well? What he did, how he tied Ernie Banks. Did you see that stat?
For extra base hits, yeah. Just a great weekend for him.
6 extra base hits in a series, yeah.
Phenomenal. And so here's the thing, though, Dustin, as we kind of take a look at how this season has come. It's kind of been a tale of 2 seasons, and it really has to do with that near perfect game that Drew Smyly threw. There was everything before and everything after that. Okay, so if you take a look at the numbers, the Cubs are getting on base. They're really good at getting on base. They've reached via walk, hit, or hit by pitch 474 times this season. Okay, 4th most among all of baseball, trailing only Tampa Bay and Atlanta and Boston, 3 very good teams. They also, though, Dustin, lead the majors with 273 left on base. The Cubs' 378 plate appearances with runners in scoring position are the most in the NL and 4th in the majors. But the Cubs are last in the last 17 games. I told you since April 22nd, the Cubs have hit 189 with runners in scoring position, 27 for 143. No good.
No, that will, if you just pick it up a little bit, they could be very competitive in this weak ass division that the National League Central is.
They're still right in this. But I told you about that game with Drew Smiley, right? When through April 21st, the club was hitting 326, 383, 46 with runners in scoring position. Now that's not really sustainable. That's really hard, right?
Right. That's smoking. Right. That's smoking hot.
But then between April 22nd and Tuesday night, the Cubs slashed 189, 300, 252 with runners in scoring position. So, I mean...
And it's almost hard to be that bad, Crawly. So somewhere in the middle, right?
Right, exactly. We get somewhere in the middle. You take a look at the Cubs' run differential. It looks like the Cubs should easily be first place in the division. But like I said, they get one of these games where they blow it open and score 10, 12 runs. And then the next 3 or 4 games, they're one-run decisions.
Yeah, and this is a great stat you have here, Crawly. The Cubs' last 10 setbacks since April 26 have been by 3 or fewer runs. Split that in half, right? Maybe if you go 5-5 in those games instead of 10 losses, boy, you're right there.
Yes, sir. Well, hopefully we'll get there.
You are listening to Season 2, Episode 35 of the Fly the W podcast. Cubs stalling versus the St. Louis Cardinals. In this segment of the show, Crawly interviews Michael Cerami of Bleacher Nation, and they're talking about his article on improving the television broadcast for Marquee Sports Network. Hope he doesn't have anything bad to say about us at 670 The Score. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast.
Joining me now on the Fly the W podcast, I have Michael Cerami from Bleacher Nation. Michael, how you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, the reason I have you on, I mean, obviously I follow you and the guys over at Bleacher Nation, and you just had an article that came out the other day that I thought our listeners would find interesting. It was called the Marquee Networks. You said, I want to talk about Cubs TV broadcasts. And, you kind of lead off with the Outside the Ivy. I remember that great show with Luis Medina and my buddy Danny Rocket. But you were just kind of trying to, tell people, hey, there's certain things that you would maybe look at changing with the broadcast, but the amount of respect that you have for people that are doing the broadcast right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, before we even get into any of the constructive criticisms, I'm going to say off the top, but I did in the article, there's a ton of talented people there. Everyone there's honestly, I genuinely, truly think they're great. A lot of smart baseball people, a lot of good ideas. And even more to the point, whatever it takes to, produce a broadcast of a Major League Baseball game. I don't know what goes into that. So a lot of times, I'm sensitive to criticizing others, even constructively, because I know that when I get criticism on stuff I do, people don't always have the full story. And a lot of times there's reasons for things being the way that they are that are out of the control of the people that you're actually directing your criticism towards. So I wanted to be really clear that one, I've been criticized in this way before and I didn't think it was fair. So I'm going to try to do it a little bit differently. And two, everyone there is doing great. And this is not supposed to be I know some people probably would have wanted it to be a call out of any one person there, because it's not how it works. But with that said, like you, I watch a lot of Cubs games on TV and I listen to a lot of Marquee and watch a lot of Marquee Sports Network broadcasts because of that. And there are things that I know I felt when I was watching the broadcast that I was like, there's no way I'm alone in not liking this or wanting more of this and less of this, So I kind of decided finally to put it all together into one place. And you know what, I'll add even one more caveat is that maybe some of these things would have been unfair to say about Marquee 1 year or 2 years into their existence or on game 3 of the season, but we're solidly into the season and solidly into the existence of Marquee. So they've had time to get their feet underneath them. They've been somewhat receptive to constructive criticism in the past. They're not wearing ties anymore in the booth, right? That was a little one. It's a little win for everybody. And so I thought I'd put it together. So, was there something that stood out in particular to you, or?
Well, when I look at the first section and you wrote baseball is regional, it's okay to act like that. Tell our listeners what you meant by that.
Oh, sure. So this is something I've been hammering for a long time. When you watch the people that watch football games are national football fans. They are often on national broadcast, and you have reasons to watch other teams. There's so many fewer games, and they're all primetime events for the most part. That's just an example. Baseball is not like that. Baseball is a regional sport. It's very, very regional. I'm a hardcore baseball fan, and I barely watch non-Cubs games live. I keep up with everything, of course, because I'm interested. And I do watch some other games, but I watch more non-Bears games on a relative basis than I watch non-Cubs games on a relative basis. There's 162 Cubs games to keep up with. I'm not going to watch all of the Los Angeles Angels. Like, no matter what, it's just not going to happen. And so when you're talking about a regional sports network producing a broadcast for a regional sport whose viewers are almost exclusively going to be Cubs fans, I don't think there's any reason to strive for the national level of balance and unbiasedness and mediation that you see on national football broadcasts, which does make sense in those scenarios because they have a lot more fans that are from all over the country or watching from both sides of the competition. So this is a Cubs broadcast. I'm not interested in like the extreme Hawk Harrelson level homerism. I don't need that, but I do need for you to be a little bit frustrated when I'm a little bit frustrated, or at a minimum, when there is something frustrating going on, you cannot turn to one of your prepackaged, lighthearted pieces of content that get displayed when I'm like, I am stressed out right now because the Cardinals are kicking the Cubs' butts, and I got to watch about whatever fake someone's shoe color that is like really cool. These cleats are awesome. They're orange. It's like, geez, like it's the wrong time. We don't need that. We're not like catered a little bit to the Cubs fans watching the game. That was that section.
And I think when you I'm a little bit older than Michael. I'm not going to say by how much, but a little bit. That's all I'm going to say. But I grew up in the era of Harry Carey, where he just had an excitement and a love for the team. And then from Harry Carey, also in the radio booth, the Pat and Ron show. And if you remember, you'd be sitting in the car, and if you got in the car and you hadn't known anything about the games, right? This is pre-cell phone era. You could tell how the Cubs were doing by the tone of Ron Santos' voice. And you kind of love that. And I think all of us kind of, grew up. And then you mentioned Len Casper with the voice crack, and as he gets excited with a home run, and I kind of agree with you on that point. And even with Len to a degree, all of a sudden I started to notice he was getting more and more kind of nationally sounding, like about how great Trevor Bauer is. No, I don't want to hear about how great anyone on the other team is. I don't care about Joey Votto. I don't care about Trevor Bauer. I don't care about these guys. If you got the occasional story, fine. Tell me about the Cubs and tell me, why you're, what's going on. And as far as the Cubs are concerned, those type of things to me make a lot more of a difference.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if Mike Trout or Shohei Ohtani are pitching at Wrigley against the Cubs, all right, we could talk about them, fine. But yeah, I certainly don't need World Baseball Classic profiles, and I really don't need anything positive about the other team. There's other broadcasts that do that. And more importantly, Marquee has so many great writers and video personalities and an entire website and an entire TV channel to dedicate to some of these other interesting stories and to complement what your overall viewing experience is. If that's stuff they want to continue producing, which again, I think they do a great job in isolation. Those things are good. If people want to seek that stuff out, there's a million ways to reach them. It doesn't need to be sort of shoehorned into the game broadcast when there's actual, again, stakes for the first time in, Cubs baseball for like 4 years, right? Like this is an important game, an important moment. I want to focus on it.
You can put that stuff on the app. You can put it on the YouTube channel. You can put it on the social media channel. There's plenty of avenues for that type of stuff. And I kind of agree with you every there. You also kind of are writing a little bit about a little less production. And I thought that was interesting because, we're all kind of getting used to the pitch clock and the time and the pace of play being much more increased than we're used to. And I talked to a lot of the minor league guys, whether it's Alex Cohen or Mick Gillespie, Brendan King and Max Toma and Sam Wiederhoff. And I asked them because they've been they already been through the pitch clock, how different is it to broadcast when you have less time than you're used to. You're cutting half an hour off the game times is what they're looking at. And I remember a couple guys just saying, look, find your best stuff and cut it down and condense it and get it in at the right time, because it is different. And I'm wondering how much of a problem that is for them, especially this year.
Yeah, well, so the pitch clock is a great point. So it kind of hits in two different ways. First, there's less downtime than ever before. So there's less of a need to fill the gaps. And that's a good thing. And the in addition to that, if you maintain the same level of like pre-produced interviews or prepackaged content or on-field interviews or any of that stuff, but the game is shortened by 30 minutes, the overall proportion of those overly produced packages, not overly produced, overly delivered, wonderfully produced packages, it takes up a bigger proportion or a bigger portion of the game itself. So they need to adjust accordingly, even to get back to the baseline level that we've seen last year. And then from there, we can decide if there's even more to go to strip away from the broadcast to focus more on the game itself. Listen, when these baseball, I get it. When these baseball games were 4 hours long, 3 hours, 3.5 hours long, yeah, it probably isn't. And when the team's not doing good, it's probably a little difficult to focus on the play-by-play. I understand that, but it's not like that anymore. The Cubs are trying to win right now, and there is a pitch clock, and the games are shorter. We need to get back to business and the business of competing and identifying the sort of things that people want to hear about when the priority is winning.
And when you say actually less is more, this series we've had a 3-man booth, and it is nice sometimes to have different voices on there, but I've never been a big fan of the 3-man booth myself.
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes there's a 3-man booth and then also Taylor or Elise on the field. And so you have 4 people talking at once, none of whom are describing what's going on in the game, because usually when the 4 of them are in that sort of roundtable conversation, it's explicitly because they're not talking about something that's going on in the game. If it was something that's going on in the game, it'd be Boog calling it and JD adding color, right? So I don't mind in general the rotating cast of announcers, of broadcasters. I think that's fun in its own right. I would understand the opposite opinion there, but when they go to the West Coast and every now and then you get to listen to Rick Sutcliffe, okay, cool, whatever. That's fun, but limiting it to 2 in the booth and 1 on the field is probably the way to go. You can have your different cast, but let's limit the actual volume to something less distracting audibly. And again, I used Danny Rockett's tweet even visibly, because there was a point where there's like split screen with 3 guys in a booth, the game in the corner, a game bug on top of that, dead green space on the top and the bottom, and multiple marquee logos. It's like, what am I even looking at right now? Like, this is just not it. Again, everyone's different, but it's not catering to me as a baseball fan what I want to see in a particular moment. So
no, I hear exactly what you're saying at this point. And that's where you kind of, like you said, a little bit too much going on, and then focusing more on the play-by-play. So as far as the play-by-play is concerned, you're ending up looking at this and saying to yourself, hey, I'm somebody who works in education. And so sometimes I always enjoy kind of like grading papers and just kind of not focusing on what's going on at the TV at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that was the big distinction there is it does not need to be like it is on the radio. When you're listening on the radio, there's not any visual cues. So I'm not looking for, that one was high and inside, and that's ball 2. And now the ball is getting thrown back to the pitcher and he's walking around the mound. Like, you don't have to paint it for me, but we got to call every play. I need to know what's going on in the game. I need to be able to walk into the kitchen and still not be completely disconnected. And here's another truth about baseball. There's so many games. Baseball can be a really awesome background thing to have on your TV, right? Like, it doesn't need to be the primary thing you're focusing on all the time, but you're only able to accomplish that if the audio that you could still hear without your eyes being fixated on the screen is what's actually happening. And when the conversations drift away, not even into those produced packages, but away from the game itself and just into whatever conversation the guys in the booth are having, there can be multiple plays or half innings going by before they even get back to the actual action on the field. And so I think my most scathing line in that entire piece was just like, if you closed your eyes and listened to a Marquee broadcast of the game, you genuinely might not have a good sense of what was going on from one inning to the next. It just doesn't always accomplish what I think is supposed to be the writ for a play-by-play announcer and the color man that is next to him. And I'm gonna be long-winded for a second. I think Boog calls games well when he focuses on it, and I think JD has a ton to offer. I love the stuff he adds. I just want what he's adding to be relevant to the exact moment of the game that we're in. So I don't want to talk about how many triples Joe Girardi hit in his career if it wasn't immediately after a catcher hitting a triple or something along those lines. You know what I mean? Like, make it about what's going on, not just something you find theoretically interesting in some other format. So that was kind of the it feels like a podcast attendant to a Cubs game comment, which, you know, I've heard other people say too. So I'm not claiming all credit of that one. But.
You know, when I get home, because my wife is very patient with me and allows me to do things that most husbands aren't allowed to do. You know, like sometimes I got to do the dishes and all that kind of stuff. And it's nice to have the TV on, and then I wash the dishes, and then something's going on. Then I want to kind of go back over to the TV and this, that. So like you say, just kind of letting me kind of, know what's going on. Now, as you know, tomorrow night, the Cubs are going to be playing the Twins, and it is going to be on Apple TV. It will not be on Marquee. And one of the big things, man, we're living in an era right now where, I mean, TVs are so clear. It's funny when you watch the old games on Marquee and you're like, oh my God, my eyes hurt. This is awful. And when you see that crystal clear picture on Apple TV, it just makes a world of difference.
Yeah, well, so Apple TV especially, I think they actually broadcast in 4K if your TV can handle it and internet. But even, again, if you have an MLB.TV subscription and you're out of network, so you're streaming the exact same broadcast that Marquee physically delivers, it's 1080p, which is high definition to all of our eyes. And by contrast, if you're streaming on the Marquee app within Chicago or in the market, because you have a cable subscription but you prefer to stream, which is what I do, again, if you have different rooms in your house and you want to watch a game but you have one cable box, let's say, it's 720p. And the good news is I did confirm that it is 720p, so we're not all crazy. It does look worse than it should. The Cubs, or Marquee I should say, is aware of it, is aware that it's like not ideal. They don't think that that's what they should be delivering. And they're actually like in the process of working out the technical details of upgrading that to 1080. And that should happen this season. I'm not like breaking any news there. That's just what they told me. And I think that's been out there. They're working on it. It's like an issue with, actual like technical aspects of streaming over an app, which I think they were just generally new to. So they had to get those bugs out, and they're aware of it. And again, it's supposed to be fixed this season is what I was told. So, fingers crossed for that, because I mean, listen, I'm not trying to be a snob, but after watching 1080 sports or 4K on Apple TV, going back to 720 it's brutal. I mean, it does not look good. So.
Right, it's like going from PS5 to Atari 2600. It's
yeah,
it's a noticeable difference, man. And then the final thing I wanted to touch on your article is the thing that we've all been pounding and hounding and yelling about ever since the idea of Marquee even came around, or that is that a standalone Marquee streaming service. HBO has one, Netflix has one. When you take a look at the list of just how people consume media nowadays, I mean, my brother is in Colorado, and he wouldn't be able to get all the stuff. I like Marquee content. I like I like a lot of the documentaries. I like a lot of the old games that they play on there. And so if you are somebody that somehow can get the app, but you can't get all the other stuff, you can just get the game. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the good news on that front, which is also in the article, and not anything I was told, just has been public information. I think Crane Kenny spoke about it a couple times. That is another thing they're actively working on, and like intend to deliver sooner than later. So there is going to be a standalone Marquee app that will allow you to subscribe the way you subscribe to Netflix or HBO Max or Hulu, any of those things. You could pay for just that, and you will be able to watch the games. And again, theoretically in 1080p. So I think, I don't know if that's going to happen in a month, in 3 months, but I would be very confident saying that this time next season, at the beginning of the season, we are all going to have the option to stream the games without a cable subscription on a standalone Marquee app, which is, again, if they do that, then they've made a huge step forward in delivering a better product to Cubs fans, because that is just a must. There's a lot of overlapping issues there with in-market streaming and the rights that MLB owns versus the rights that teams own, and the ability to rake in big dollars on cable deals when you are otherwise offering the package as a standalone. So that might hurt the Cubs financially in the short term, but it is without a doubt a better long-term financial decision. And it is what everyone wants. You cannot be alienating people from watching your product. And I have a ton of friends, a lot of people my age are cord cutters. I have cable exclusively to watch the Cubs. I do not use it any other time. And I have to pay a full cable package because you can't buy just one channel to do for that privilege. And that stinks. So it's honestly, Comcast or Xfinity or RCN, they're going to be pissed to hear it. But as soon as that becomes available, I'm canceling my cable subscription. I'm going to subscribe to Marquee, and I'll save a bunch of money every month getting the exact thing I actually want. It's 2023. You have to have that as an option.
Well, not only that, Michael, but the hope is that anybody can watch it anywhere because of the WGN Superstation in the 80s and even into the 90s. It allowed people that didn't have access to baseball teams to fall in love with the Cubs. And so whenever you see the Cubs away games or whatever, you always see plenty of Cub fans in the stands. And so in that regard there, it was a huge, it helped them financially to be able to do that. Right. And so what you worry about is there's going to be a generation, like my nephew lives out in Colorado and my brother doesn't have the MLB package. He just wants to watch the Cubs. And so, there's a generation that you could potentially be losing of fans all over this country that want to watch Marquee and Marquee content and Cubs games, obviously, more than anything.
Yeah. And, for what it's worth, there has been some positive signs in the general sports industry. Brett is the guy to talk to about this stuff because he nerds out about it and is really good about it. But there are a couple teams, I think there was 1 or 2 NBA teams that are starting to broadcast their or make available their broadcast for free, having made the determination that expanding your fan base will pay off in the long run. And it's like, yeah, duh. Like everybody knows that. You know what I mean? Like, if the fact that you would, listen, it always comes back to this idea of sacrificing short-term dollars, and no one's ever willing to do that. But the long-term best option for all of these industries is to give people what they want, allow them to engage with your team, and they're going to buy gear, and they're going to buy tickets, and they're going to read your articles where there's ads being served, and they're going to watch your broadcast where there's commercials still being played, where you still can get paid by the increase in eyes. And so stuff like that is going to keep happening, and is like all of these Sinclair regional sports networks folding and MLB sort of taking those all in one place. It's going to be a turbulent few years, but I think 10 years from now, the entire way we interact with watching our favorite sports teams play is going to be just completely different than it is now. We are at this, we're already past the end, in my opinion, of the big cable subscription model. The Dodgers and the Phillies got the last big giant mega deals. Obviously the Cubs struggled to do that. We're in this weird hybrid mode where there's some streaming options, but you might need a subscription, but you might need a cable deal, and so on. We are transitioning out of that. It's just the beginning. And eventually there's going to be this realization that the world is not the way it was, and you need to be able to give people what they want when they want it, and they are willing to pay for it. Listen, it's the same thing that happened with the music industry, or even movies. Before you were able to stream and rent whatever you wanted from iTunes, people were torrenting and ripping music off of Napster at insane rates. Well, guess what? Now there's Spotify, and you know what everyone does? Pays $4.99 a month or whatever it is to listen to whatever song they want. No one's on Napster anymore. People are not doing that because you gave people a legal, reasonable option to get the stuff the way that they actually wanted to get it. So that's the kind of like fundamental principles that everyone in these positions of power need to reckon with. And I think we are closely approaching that moment, and that's going to be good for all of us.
And everything that this whole year is about with the rules changes is about growing the game. And what better way to grow the game than to allow people to actually watch the game? It's the most simplest thing you could do to, my dad grew up in an era where baseball was number one and there wasn't anything close to it. And for me, when I was growing up, it was baseball and football were kind of on equal footing. And now, football and basketball have kind of left baseball behind. And if baseball has any inkling of trying to get back into that national spotlight, these changes need to be made.
Yeah, no question about it. And, I'll give you one other example and they've gotten a lot better about it. You remember, because you were there, like 6, 7, 8 years ago when we would want to share highlights or clips from Cubs games, we would get slapped on the wrist all the time by MLB or the Cubs or whomever. And it's like, hold on a second. I am here taking your product and literally advertising it for you to the world by saying, look at how amazing this is. And you're going to stop me from doing it. Like Rob Friedman, Pitching Ninja, was banned for a couple months. And it was like, he does more good for your brand than any of your content creators can. And they realize that eventually. And they're like, oh, okay. You guys can share highlights like on social media and stuff. It's like, yes, we're literally doing your job for you. It's not that we don't benefit in the process, but not in the long-term way that you certainly are. You should want everyone to be able to interact with, share, and enjoy your product as much as possible. It will lead to dollars in the long term. And I'm not naive. I know that that's the point. They're a business. That's cool. Make your money, but have some long-term, sense about what you're actually doing by sacrificing whatever value you might get in the short term for the long term.
Well, Michael, I appreciate you jumping on here. And for people that are interested, again, the article's up on Bleacher Nation, and I encourage everyone to kind of take a look at it. And again, I think you did it in a way that was positive, but also with some really helpful suggestions that hopefully people at the top are looking at. And I'm sure Cub fans everywhere, when they read this article, will be kind of nodding their heads. Michael, where can our listeners find you on social media?
So you could find me at Michael_Cerami on Twitter, and then also at Bleacher Nation, the website, and that's also our handle on Twitter at Bleacher Nation. So please do follow us there, like us on Facebook, all the good stuff. But yeah, Twitter, Facebook, and BleacherNation.com.
Michael, thank you, and I hope to see you at a game soon, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to talk to you.
Take care, bud.
All right, Crawly, great job with the interview. It's segment 3. It's season 2. It's episode 35 of the Fly the W670 podcast. Cubs stall versus the Cardinals, and the Cubs, Crawly, have moved north. They are up in Minneapolis to spend the weekend taking on the Twins. We're going to get to that in a few minutes, and it's the start of a 9-game road trip. But let's talk about the roster, the setup, as the Cubs hit the road for 9 on the road.
Yep. Before the game on Monday, Nelson Velasquez was optioned to Iowa, and Christopher Morel was brought up to Chicago in a move that nobody saw coming. Ross was asked about Morel and how he would be used. He said, I don't know that there's this big path for every day at bats. The ability to get Velasquez back to AAA and not let him sit on the bench, and some ability to mix in Morel in time to time is probably going to be more of a role than just every day at bats. Now, he says that before the injury to Nico Hoerner. But it's one of those things that had me worried. Is what I told you about is Velasquez is sitting there rotting on the bench. So they're going to send him to AAA to try to get some playing times. I'm just worried Morel is going to be sitting there rotting on the bench now too. And it just throw these guys off so bad because it's really hard to come back and just jump in the middle and start hitting.
They made the right move with Velasquez, I think, and we'll see. I mean, they get a day off today. Let's see what... I think if Christopher Morel is getting 1 out of every 3 games off and then a pinch hitting role, I think that's okay.
We'll see what happens. Before the game on Wednesday, Yan Gomes was activated off the concussion protocol and Miguel Amaya was sent to AAA. Remember, when Amaya was called up, he was a AA. So even though it's a demotion, it's kind of a promotion because he's now moved on to AAA, which, Amaya opened a lot of eyes with his maturity, the way he handled the pitchers. Hayden Wesniewski spoke highly of the game that Amaya called, said he never shook him off, just let him call the game. And so I think, it's never been a question of talent with Amaya. It's just a question of can the guy stay healthy? And if he is, then he comes back to looking like the heir apparent to Willson Contreras.
Yeah, he was pretty impressive when he was up here, but this, again, is the right move. I would rather have Amaya catching every four or 5 days a week than maybe catching once a week up here. And with the other guys up here, he's not going to get any pinch hit opportunities either.
And you saw what a different, I don't want to say you saw a difference, but it just, like you talked about earlier, if you were to talk about the month of April, there's an argument to be made that Yan Gomes was the MVP of April. And
all right, we had this argument today on the air. Mully likes to, bust my backside about it. Yan Gomes is the Cubs MVP so far. Dansby Swanson is a better player than Yan Gomes is, but right now, Yan Gomes is the MVP of the Cubs. Listen, I hope we get to a situation where Dansby Swanson's in the National League MVP race, and if that's the case, that means the Cubs are winning and Yan Gomes is still going, and I'll still say that Yan Gomes was more important in the Cubs than Dansby Swanson.
In the month of April. And I get both sides.
And they need in the month of April, and if they end up doing something good, that month of April is going to be a big part of where they got to.
Right. And so when we look at the injury report, talked about Nico Hoerner, and he left Monday's game with hamstring tightness while running to third on Dansby Swanson's double. An MRI showed a mild left hamstring strain. He's not going on the IL. He's day-to-day. I saw some video on Marquee the other day of him stretching, doing agility drills with the training staff, so that's exciting news.
I'd be shocked if he didn't play up in Minnesota, Crawly. Shocked.
Yeah. I think they're not going to rush it. There's no need to with Morel up now, but let's see what happens. You want to get you ready for some guy to come up pretty soon, sooner rather than later. Get ready for Kyle Hendricks. He came to Chicago to work on some things with pitching coach Tommy Hotovy, and when he returned to Iowa, he had his best start, throwing 5 shutout innings, striking out 4, and walking nobody. He gave up 2 hits, one of them a cheap bloop single. His next start is Sunday, but I'm telling you right now, Dustin, and I'm just looking at the calendar as somebody that didn't think it was possible for Hendricks to be back. I could see him potentially starting that next homestand against the Mets.
Yeah. Okay. I can live with that. Mm-hmm.
Now, another guy in Iowa, along with Kyle Hendricks, is Codi Heuer. He only pitched 2/3 of an inning on the same day that Hendricks had that start, but he got 2 strikeouts and a walk as he recovers from Tommy John surgery. Now, keep in mind, he's a lot further away than Kyle is, at least another couple months. But Dustin, coming out on his second rehab start, he was hitting 98.8 miles per hour on the gun.
That's exciting. It's absolutely exciting.
So for people that thought the Cubs got fleeced on the Craig Kimbrell trade, that's not done yet. Let's not proclaim that was a flop.
I don't know how you could say they got fleeced. I mean, Nick Madrigal's been okay. He was terrible. He was absolutely terrible for the White Sox.
Absolutely, and so I just know people that complained about the trade, and to me, I felt that Codi Heuer was the better piece than Nick Madrigal of the 2 pieces. I was more excited about Codi Heuer, and I can see him being a potential closer. If you get a guy in July or August that's hitting 100 miles per hour, that's going to be interesting. Brandon Hughes.
I can't wait.
Brandon Hughes threw a 32 pitch bullpen the other day. He felt good. The Cubs are monitoring how he feels afterwards. He's going to have to wear a brace on that knee, but I hopefully we get a lefty back in the pen as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's important. There's no doubt about that. And with or without the brace, no problem. Carlos Correa is on his 3rd team now. That's the Twins. First he was with the Giants, then he was a Met. Now he's a Twin, and he's got the fans in Minneapolis booing him, Crawly. And the Cubs are going up there for a 3-game series starting on Friday.
Yeah, last season, the Twins struggled. They finished 3rd in the AL Central with a record of 78-84. Cubs did not play the Twins last season. The last time they played them was in 2021. The Cubs have played the Twins 37 times since the league started, and they have a record of 20-17 against them. The Twins made a lot of changes in the offseason. Like you said, Carlos Correa bounced around, and he ended right back up with the Twins. They got right-hander Pablo Lopez, catcher Christian Vasquez, outfielder Joey Gallo, infielder Kyle Farmer, outfielder Michael Taylor. They had a couple big losses, though. We know Luis Arias. We've seen the damage that guy does, and then at third base, Gio Urshela. So, but they have a pretty good team right now. When we look at the standings and we look at how the Cubs are doing right now, you talk about how competitive the Cubs are in this division. They're 2.5 games back from first place as you see the Pirates just continue their free fall. They're still in first place, 21-17. Milwaukee at 20-17, and the Cubs right below 500, one game, 18-19. So hoping that the Cubs can, get on a winning path. What I worry about, Dustin, is there's some good teams coming up, and they did not take the opportunity they had against Washington, Miami, and a surprisingly weak Cardinals team.
Yeah, there are some teams that are better than the Cubs on paper anyway coming up. But hey, let's focus right now on the Twins. I like this matchup. I think the Cubs can go up there and take 2 out of 3, especially if Nico Hoerner's coming back and playing like he's played so far.
Well, the Twins just finished up a series against San Diego on Thursday. They're winning. They won 2 of 3 in that series. They're in the AL Central. They're 21-17. They're in first place ahead of Detroit, Cleveland, and the White Sox, all who have losing records, along with Kansas City.
Woo.
Yeah,
Woo.
yeah. And so, it'll be interesting. When we look at the pitching probables, I just want to remind our listeners that Game 1 will be on Apple TV. It will not be on Marquee. So if you're kind of flipping around the stations and you're saying, where are the Cubs at? They are not going to be playing that one on Marquee. So, and again, it's not free this year. Last year they did it to kind of entice some fans. It is a really good quality picture, and I like it a lot. But, if you don't have Apple TV, you're out of luck here.
670 the score, Crawly.
Hey, listen to the Hall of Famer, Pat Hughes.
Pat and Ron and Zach.
Drew Smiley is starting Game 1 versus Sonny Gray. Drew Smiley at 3-1, 3.05 ERA. He was pitching really good, but his last start against Miami at home, not so much. That was the one where he had to grind through it. He had 3.1 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs. He had 3 walks and 5 Ks, but not as good as he had been, like against Washington, where he went 7 innings and gave up 1 run, or San Diego, where he went 5 innings and gave up 2 runs. So hopefully he kind of has a good start. I've been impressed for the most part with what I've seen, but the last one he didn't have it.
Yeah, he didn't look as sharp as he's looked, but I still, even though Sonny Gray's 4-0 with a 1.35 ERA, I like the Cubs' chances.
Yeah, how about Sonny Gray? Kind of a guy that you almost forgot about a little bit. He's kind of having a really good season over in Minneapolis, 4-0, 1.35 ERA. In his last game against Cleveland, though, he didn't look so good, just like Drew Smiley. He went 5 innings, gave up 4 hits, 3 runs. He also gave up 3 walks, but he also has a lot of strikeouts with 6 strikeouts. So before that against KC, he went 6 innings and gave up 1 run, but kind of beating KC is kind of like beating Oakland, you know what I mean? Yep. But he dominated the Yankees. He went 7 innings pitched. He only gave up 3 hits and 0 runs. So Cubs are going to have their work cut out for him against Sonny Gray. Now, the interesting thing to me, though, is with these different teams, they haven't faced each other a lot. So there's not a ton of numbers that the guys have against each other. So when we talk about Smiley and we talk about Drew Gray, as far as Minnesota, Kyle Farmer's seen Smiley 11 times and has a 273 batting average. And Solano at first base, 333 at 12 at-bats. So those are the only 2 guys that really have real numbers. Correa has 8 at-bats and only hits 125. The Twins have seen Smiley a little bit more. You have Yan Gomes, 14 at-bats, 143. But Ian Happ, 400 against him in 10 at-bats. And how about Trey Mancini, 467 in 15 at-bats? So that's good on that one, right?
We better see Trey Mancini then.
So you DHing. That's what I want to see. I want to see Mancini DHing. That would make me happy.
Mancini DH and Mervis at first, right?
Absolutely. You gotta. It's a little tough stretch for Merv, and he's gonna have to.
But all right-handed pitching, all right-handed starters, so that plays into him, right?
Right. And so the next game that we take a look at is Hayden Wesneski 3-1 with the 393 versus Joe Ryan. If you remember the last game for Hayden, I felt that was his strongest game so far this year. I really felt that the slider was clicking. I thought it was, just really what I wanted to see. Against Miami, he went 6 innings pitched, gave up 5 hits and 1 run. And against Washington, 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 run. And then against San Diego, 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 run. So in his last 3 starts, he hasn't given up more than 1 run. So hoping that Hayden is really starting to get dialed in, right?
Absolutely. He was okay, right? He was okay in the last start. He was okay. The guy I'm most worried about right now is Tyone, and he's not going in this series. So.
Makes sense. Joe Ryan is going to be on the bump for the Twins. The last game, he had about 6 innings pitched, he gave up 8 hits, 2 earned runs. Against the White Sox, 6 innings pitched, gave up 0 earned runs. And against the Yankees, 7 innings pitched, 1 earned runs. If you take a look at both of these teams, the Cubs and the White Sox, you sound pretty confident. My concern a little bit is there are 2 teams that kind of mirror each other a little bit, where starting pitching really seems to be what's the strong point of both of these teams. And hitting wise, I think the Cubs have been hitting better, just with worse luck as far as runners in scoring position. But I think, that's going to be the difference. Now, no one has really seen Wesneski other than Kyle Farmer 5 times and Solano, first baseman, 5 times. As far as the Cubs facing Ryan, Barnhart's seen him 5 times and has a 400 average, and Wisdom's seen him 4 times and he hasn't gotten a hit. So that might be a good Morel start.
You got David Ross's number? We'll text him.
You got that number. I don't have that one. Now, game 3, Marcus Stroman, 2-3, 228 versus Louis Verlander, 0 for 0 with the 432 average. We've talked about the Stro show in a way. He's kind of, and he's absolutely fine with it, but he's just a little bit overlooked right now because of
because of how great Justin Steele's been. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, he has been
he's been almost as good. The problem is when you look at 2 and 3, you think, well, what's going on with that?
Right, and that's where you get fooled on that. He went 6 innings and gave up 2 runs. He just throws quality starts. It's almost
Sorry I let you down there, buddy.
No, it's good. It's 6 innings pitched against Washington. He gave up 1 run. Miami, 6.1 inning. He gave up 2 runs. So the guy's not giving up more than 2 runs anywhere he goes. So if you look at the starters that you have going, other than that last time out for Smiley, you can't ask for, this is obviously you could ask for Justin Steele, but you're looking at a team that really is going to be throwing 3 good starters against Minnesota. And I don't think that Minnesota can say the same thing, in my opinion.
No, that's why, Crawly, when we get into the prediction time, I'm going to have the Cubs winning the series, but we're not there yet. Let's do a little hot not.
All righty, let's talk about who's hot for the Cubs and who's not. Who's hot? Dansby Swanson. Last 26 at-bats, 8 hits, 5 doubles, 1 home run, and 6 RBIs. So looking really good with a 308 average. Ian Happ on fire, and that guy's just an on-base machine. He's hitting 304. His on base is 448, and his slugging's 478. He has one of the highest OBPs in all of baseball. He's taking his walks, and that's a good thing. As far as the not, Seiya Suzuki, we talked about a little bit earlier. He's getting better. He's warming up. He's at 222, which isn't awful. 333, 278 slug. Matt Mervis, as you heard Carter Hawkins talk a little bit about it, struggling. He's had 21 at bats. Right now, he's had 4 hits. He's had 2 RBIs, but in 21 at bats, that takes you down. That's a 190 average, 227, 190 slug. So Mervis, we're just going to have to be patient, and it's those growing pains that come with being a young guy in the major leagues.
Yeah, he's pressing a little bit, swinging at stuff that he should not be swinging at. There's no doubt about that. How about we don't have any hot Twins, and we talked about Carlos Correa is definitely on the not.
Yeah, I was struggling. I mean, like I said, when you look at pitching, I think the pitching is what's hot for the Twins, and they're going to have 2 really hot starters going. But as far as the hitters concerned, they're everyday players. Their best everyday player right now, Jose Miranda's hitting 214 in the last week. So that's where our cold is their hot hitter right now. And it gets even worse when you think about Correa. In his last 20 at-bats, Dustin, he has 2 hits. That's a 100 average for those of you scoring at home, 167 on base, and a .091 slug. Byron Buxton, who is, a DH, he's not hitting anything. He's got 1 hit in his last 17, or I'm sorry, 0 hits in his last 17 at bats. So he's
still
at 0,
scares
0,
me.
0.
He still scares me. I wouldn't get too cute with him because he can turn a game around quickly.
No doubt, but as of right now, that's not what happened. So that's who we got for hot and not.
All right, prediction time, Crawly. I will go first. I'm being optimistic here. I say the Cubs take 2 out of 3. My prediction is both Friday and on Sunday are the Cubs wins, and I think Saturday would be close. It would not knock my socks off if when we're talking Sunday or Monday if the Cubs have not swept the Twins.
I will agree with everything that you said. I see the Cubs taking 2 of 3. We all know what it's about. It's about that big clutch hit and just relaxing and having good approaches. And I think if they do that, the Cubs will be in good shape.
Crawly, have a heck of a weekend. Hopefully you're going to get to spend some time with your mom. Happy Mother's Day to your wife and all the moms listening to the Fly the W podcast. So that is a wrap, everybody. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow the socials, Fly the W on Facebook, Instagram. Email us, flythew670gmail.com. And now you can watch us on the YouTube by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, enjoy the weekend and enjoy the Cubs games.
You have a great weekend yourself, and it's time to tame the Twinkies. Go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!